This is the iQOO Neo 6, the Vivo sub-brand's gaming-focused phone aimed at budget gamers. Now, I've been using this phone for a while, and this is the full detailed review of the Neo 6, and I've also thrown in a camera comparison with the iQOO 7 because most of the features are very similar and I wanted to figure out what's the difference like. Well, if you don't know me yet, I'm Arshad, you're watching Track and Take English, your destination for detailed gadget reviews. Honestly, I don't mind the fact that the Neo 6 actually looks a lot like the iQOO 7 and the iQOO 9 SE because after a couple of iterations, it actually feels like the most attractive phone with this industrial design. And you know what? I really like this dark Nova color, that black and green gradient that it has going on looks absolutely fetching. Now, this redesigned camera module is definitely a looker in my opinion, and I like that Neo logo at the bottom of that camera module. It's designed in this 8-bit pixel graphic style and it looks damn cute. And you know what, the in-hand feel is actually pretty good too, especially with this matte finish on the rear, and it is slightly slimmer than the iQOO 7 and definitely considerably lighter when you hold it in your hand side by side. And the reason for that is that the backing material is actually now made of plastic and not glass. Although I really do not mind the use of plastic because the in-hand feel is very good. And the rest of the design includes a Type-C 2.0 port at the bottom, stereo speaker setup, nice clicky tactile buttons, of course made of plastic because the frame is also plastic, and you also get an infrared port on the top, which is definitely a new addition and a welcome addition as well. Now, if you've come this far and if you like what you see, and maybe you like what you see after you've seen the entire video, don't forget to hit the like button and maybe even comment below because, you know, YouTube algorithm values engagement. I've said that many times before, and if you haven't heard it before, then don't forget to hit the red subscribe button to hear me say it over and over again. And I did test the stereo speakers out on both the iQOO Neo 6 and the iQOO 7, and they sound very similar. Take a listen for yourself, and of course they do sound very good according to me. You guys let me know what you guys think. And before we close off the design, I would also like to mention that the iQOO Neo 6 does come with IP52 rating, which is actually a very good thing. Now, the iQOO Neo 6 has a 6.62-inch E4 AMOLED panel with 800 nits of peak brightness in regular usage and 1300 nits of peak brightness when you're watching HDR content. And you get HDR playback on YouTube and Netflix as well by default, which is very, very good. Now, as is the case with most Vivo and iQOO phones, you do get a professional mode in the display settings on the software, and it is very close to natural when you actually switch it on. The delta E is kind of pretty low. But there is a visible warm color shift when you view the display at an angle, especially when you're looking at a white screen. Now, apart from that, I didn't face any issues as such. For its price, the display is actually great. What also makes the display great is that, of course, you get a 120Hz refresh rate with a smart switch that just switches between 60Hz and 120Hz. But you also get a touch sampling rate of 360Hz and an instant touch sampling rate which can shoot up to 1200 Hz when you're playing certain games. I played a lot of rounds of Apex Legends on this phone, and trust me, the touch sampling rate actually makes the gaming experience jolly good. In fact, I would say that this is possibly one of the best touch responses on a display that I've had all year long. However, unlike the iQOO 7, you do not have that special display chip, so you do not get frame interpolation on the iQOO Neo 6, which is actually a feature that I loved on the iQOO 7. It can basically intersperse frames digitally to offer higher FPS in games where it is actually not available. So sometimes, 60 FPS games can actually run at 90 FPS. It's actually a feature you must try to experience and figure out how different it feels. Now, both these phones also do come with an optical in-display fingerprint scanner, which of course is placed really low. But what I like about the fingerprint scanner is that it's very fast to unlock the phone. And you also get an X-axis, vibration haptic feedback motor. And it's very good on the iQOO Neo 6. It is as good as the iQOO 7, which means that you get tight and precise vibration feedback, which is also useful when you're gaming. Now, compared to the Sony IMX598 48 megapixel sensor on the iQOO 7, you get a 64 megapixel Samsung GW1P sensor on the iQOO Neo 6, which of course comes with optical image stabilization similar to the iQOO 7 as well. But the ultra wide now has been downgraded to 8 megapixels compared to 13 megapixels on the iQOO 7, which could also do macro, by the way, because there is a dedicated macro camera separate on the iQOO Neo 6, which is a 2 megapixel sensor. On the front, you of course get a 16 megapixel selfie camera on both these phones. Starting with the detailed retention of the sensors used by the primary cameras of the iQOO 7 and the iQOO Neo 6, I noticed that the iQOO 7 offers slightly sharper details at closer crop, and the pictures had a tad bit more contrast to add definition to sharp lines. Also, if you notice closely, the iQOO Neo 6 has a wider field of view, which you will see in future images as well. Now, when it comes to the colors, the Neo 6's washed out image doesn't do justice to the bright red patch on the book. Both offer a fairly accurate color temperature, but iQOO 7's comparatively punchier shot is actually how it looked in real life. Now, with HDR pictures, I noticed that you get slightly more depth in the shadow region and extension in the highlights to offer a wider dynamic range on the iQOO 7. The iQOO Neo 6 doesn't have that range when it comes to controlling the highlights in particular. Sometimes it does get blown out. Now, looking at these pictures of Sagar, the differences get really confusing to evaluate. The iQOO 7 has a slightly more contrasty image, giving textures and the whole image a lot of pop. That level of depth and detail is missing on the iQOO Neo 6. But the facial tones and the color of the shirt are accurate on the Neo 6. Now, against the light with HDR fired, you can clearly identify that the iQOO 7 is actually better. Now, portraits are nearly identical on both when it comes to the edge detection capabilities and the blur in the background. And as for the rest of the parameters such as the facial tones, the colors, the details, etc., it is the same evaluation as a non-portrait shot. In low light shots, the iQOO Neo 6 offers a more realistic exposure of the scene as opposed to the iQOO 7's unnecessarily over-brightened look. The detail retention is also very similar. And if the iQOO Neo 6's sky is noisy, the iQOO 7 adds digital artifacts after processing. Now, in the second sample, however, the iQOO Neo 6's green-yellow tint and noise looks really bad. I mean, both the processing styles are almost on par, and sometimes the iQOO 7 offers, better looking pictures compared to the iQOO Neo 6, and sometimes the iQOO Neo 6 offers the better looking picture of the two. Now, macros look sharper and more natural in the iQOO 7 owing to the higher resolution captures. Also, while it is not evident immediately, the iQOO 7 also offers sharper ultra-wide shots in daylight. Just pixel peep into any part of the image and you will see the differences. And the color science is closer to accurate too. Similarly, low-light ultrawides look cleaner and sharper on the iQOO 7 compared to the noisy images that you get on the iQOO Neo 6. Now, when we move on to the selfies, that's where the tables kind of turn, and iQOO has improved the selfie algorithm considerably now. Now, as you can tell from these pictures, the Neo 6 has far more accurate facial colors compared to the slightly reddish tint on the iQOO 7. Now, detail retention, although, are very similar on both the phones. And in selfie portraits, considering the edge detection and the blur in the background are nearly identical on both, the iQOO Neo 6 still beats the iQOO 7 in color accuracy. Low light selfies also look better as a result on the Neo 6. But the iQOO 7 has a special night mode, which is useless anyway, considering the AI Extreme Night Mode makes your face look like it was dumped in a pile of synthol powder. Front camera video recording is infinitely better on the iQOO Neo 6. You get better dynamic range performance, facial colors, details, and stabilization. Even the sound recording is crisper and fuller on the Neo 6. Just listen to the difference and you'll see how good it is.
Seems to me that the iQOO Neo 6 has slightly better dynamic range performance.
In fact, I was also genuinely surprised at the better quality 4K 30fps footage from the rear camera on the Neo 6 as well. The Neo 6 has crisper details, better dynamic range, stabler footage, and way better sound recording too.
Do let me know what you guys thought about the sound quality. This is the level of my voice. Do let me know what you guys thought about the sound quality. This is the level of my voice.
Now, you don't get OIS or EIS on the standard 4K 60fps video on both, but you do get an ultra stable option which works at 1080p 60fps, and it is equally good on both. Now, moving on to the performance, the iQOO Neo 6 has the tried and tested Snapdragon 870 chip inside, and it comes with LPDDR4X RAM and UFS 3.1 storage as well. And what I did like about the iQOO Neo 6 is that iQOO has tuned the software in a way where it doesn't kill the apps in the background, which is actually a very good thing. This phone aced all the benchmark tests I threw at it, especially in AnTuTu. I got the best AnTuTu score on a Snapdragon 870 phone yet. And also more importantly, I got a 3D Mark Wildlife stress test score of 99.4%, which is very, very good. It's one of my favorite tests. And the iQOO Neo 6 aces it, and it just lost about 10 percentage of battery and 10-degree rise in temperature as well. Now, while those are benchmarks, what's interesting to note are the graphics settings in games. BGMI runs at HDR and Extreme, Call of Duty runs at very high and max, and you can run Apex Legends at original graphics settings as well. And imagine that's possible on the Snapdragon 870, and that's the maximum possible on most Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 phones as well. And like I mentioned, the iQOO Neo 6 won't heat up as much or throttle as much either, making it the most smarter option compared to a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 phone when it comes to gaming. Because while the 8 Gen 1 has a far more powerful GPU, there are very few games that can actually take advantage of that at the moment. The iQOO Neo 6 works perfectly fine for most graphically intensive games on Android. Clearly, the iQOO Neo 6 is a mid-range performance and gaming based. I did use the phone with my Airtel SIM as my primary, and the 4G network performance was great and the call quality was very good too. Considering I didn't have that great of an experience with the X80, this was a welcome change. And more importantly, you also do get 4G plus carrier aggregation too. But you only get support for 4 5G bands, the most important 5G bands for what it is worth, and it is worth nothing at the moment because you really cannot use 5G in India. Now, inside the phone, you get a 4700 mAh battery and you get a much faster 80 watt flash charge technology. In our testing, it charged from 0 to 100 in about 33 minutes. And the best part about the iQOO Neo 6 is its battery performance. I was blown away. Of course, the iQOO 7 was great too, and the Neo 6 continues that legacy. I got about 6 hours and 30 minutes in a couple of my runs, but I was pushing the phone to its limits. If I were to use it moderately, trust me, you will get about 7 hours to 8 hours of screen on time easily, and it can last you about 1.5 days of usage without any worry. Now, the iQOO Neo 6 runs on FunTouch OS 12 based on Android 12 with the April security patch, and iQOO promises 2 years of software updates and 3 years of security updates, all of which is great except for FunTouch OS's visual identity itself, which I'm not a fan of, and I've mentioned multiple times in both my Vivo and iQOO phone reviews. I mean, the polish could be better, and of course, the fact that there are many bloatware apps pre-installed is a bit of an issue as well. But I suppose the hardware inside the iQOO Neo 6 more than makes up for the lack of polish in the software considering the price of the phone. And I suppose you can also delete whatever bloatwares you don't want on the phone, so that's actually not a problem. The iQOO Neo 6 is clearly a no-brainer gaming phone for those folks who do not want to break the bank. It can run all modern graphically intensive games at the top settings, just like the Dimensity 9000 and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. Plus, it can run it with better thermals and better battery life too. The plastic material notwithstanding, I do also really like the design of the phone because it's slimmer, lighter, and the in-hand feel is actually very, very good. Now, most people must have presumed that the iQOO 7 would have better camera performance. Yes, it does when it comes to imaging using the primary camera, the ultrawide, and the macro. But as we saw in our camera comparison, the selfie performance is actually better on the iQOO Neo 6, and so is the video recording quality on the iQOO Neo 6, which is definitely better than the iQOO 7. And it's not like the iQOO 7 has a huge advantage when it comes to cameras, really. Of course, the Neo 6 is the newer phone, and therefore it is a better one overall when you look at it from a cost to performance perspective across all the different categories. And if you ask me, I have a feeling that the iQOO 7 will be phased out and the Neo 6 will become the mainstay with Snapdragon 870 for iQOO at the moment. And later on in the future, in future sales, iQOO can definitely reduce the cost of the phone as well to make it a more enticing proposition too. So what do you folks think of the iQOO Neo 6? Do let me know in the comment section below. I hope you guys like this video. Until next time, this is Arshad signing off. Keep tracking and stay safe.